Hello everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am here to bring you guys another get ready with me style mid-month wrap up. This is my mid-February reading wrap up. I have read 17 books so far this month, so 17 books in 14 days is pretty amazing in my opinion. And yeah, I just kind of felt like bringing these get ready with me style videos back to my channel. Kind of got away from them for a couple of months, but I am back and I'm filming this on Valentine's Day. So I'm wearing my adorable romance novels sweatshirt by Fugly Barbie. No, I'm not sponsored. I wish that I was because I'm obsessed with them. But today I think I'm gonna do like a very pinky eyeshadow look because it is Valentine's Day, and I hope that you all had a safe and loving Valentine's Day, by the way. So let's go ahead and jump on into this. I did do my foundation and concealer already just to kind of speed things along just a little bit. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump into it. So the first 4 books that I read this month are all by one of my favorite historical romance authors at this point, Miss Lorraine Heath. So I read her Scoundrels of St. James series. Yes, yes, that is the name of the series. I get this series confused with the Scandalous Gentlemen of St. James series, which is actually a series that's connected to this one. But I wanted to go back and read this series specifically because of the chronological order of some of Lorraine Heath's series. And I was really excited about this series because book 2 is Jack Dodger's story, and I met Jack Dodger's character when I read, let me think about it. It was Falling into Bed with a Duke, which is book 1 in Lorraine Heath's Hellions of Havisham series. We get to see Jack as a father, and so then I looked up Jack's name and Lorraine Heath, and his book came up as a part of this series. So I was really excited to get to his book. But let's talk about book 1 real quick. What's really cool about this series is that it's definitely based off of Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens, and Lorraine Heath does not shy away from that at all. There's even a scene in one of the books, I want to say it's book 3, where Mr. Charles Dickens himself shows up and alludes to the fact that his book is based off of these Scandalous Gentlemen. So that's just really fun. But yeah, book 1 is about Lucian. He seems to be the Oliver Twist like character himself. And then we have, is her name Catherine? Yes, Catherine is the heroine, and also I was very smart today and I took notes for myself just like for my last wrap up. But yeah, so Catherine comes to Lucian and she asks him to kill a man for her. She refuses to tell him anything about this man or why he should be killed or anything like that. But Lucian nonetheless is very intrigued by Catherine, but at the same time, it comes to light, I mean, kind of early on in the book, that Lucian killed someone because that person did something terrible to someone that he grew up with. Because the idea behind this whole series is that these are all people that grew up on the streets together as children, and this guy named Fagin took them all in, taught them how to be the best thieves ever. And so now as adults, they've kind of made something of themselves. So I gave this one 4.5 stars. As usual with Lorraine Heath, there was so much angst, so much passion between these two. This is definitely my second favorite book of the series. I can't quite remember why it wasn't a full 5 stars because I did really connect with this couple, and I even cried a little bit at the end because Lorraine Heath makes you work for that HEA for sure. But yeah, it was just really great. But the star of this series, in my opinion, is book 2, which is Between the Devil and Desire. This is Jack Dodger's story, and as you can kind of tell by his last name, he is definitely based off of the Artful Dodger, and that's the kind of kid that he was growing up on the streets. And so this is his romance. He owns a gambling den. This is his romance with Olivia. Yes, Olivia. She is a single parent and she's now a widow. The whole catalyst for this story is that Olivia is a duchess. Her husband, the Duke, passed away kind of unexpectedly. At the reading of her husband's will, Jack shows up and she's like, first of all, like, kind of who the hell are you and why are you here, you know? And so they definitely do not start off on good terms, but yeah, her husband's solicitor says that basically Olivia and Olivia's son has been left under the care of Jack Dodger, and Jack Dodger also now has complete access to everything in the dukedom until her son, because her son's only like 5 years old, until her son reaches his majority. And so yeah, they do not start off on good terms. This is definitely a hate to love situation. And oh my God, this just served everything that I hoped it would and more. Like Jack's character, I love him so much. By the way, this series definitely has a darker tone. It's not quite as dark, in my opinion, as like Kerrigan Burns historicals or like the Maiden Lane series by Elizabeth Hoyt, but it's definitely darker. So maybe if you're trying to dip your toe into darker historicals, maybe start with this series. But yeah, oh my God, this book gave me everything that I needed. So amazing, because we also get to see Jack like bond with Olivia's son, and that's always an endearing thing to see. And like the build up to and the steamy scenes themselves, guys, like it was hot. Oh my goodness, I'm obsessed with Olivia and Jack. I apologize if this is not the best lighting, by the way. I'm looking in my viewfinder and yeah, it is what it is. But let's continue on with the series. So book 3 is Surrender to the Devil. So this one is about Franny, who was the only girl in their little group of thieves growing up, and her story is definitely really, I mean, all of their stories are rough, but her stories is especially rough in that when she was a child, she was very brutally raped. And this is about Sterling, who is the brother of Catherine, the heroine from book 1, so that is their connection. And I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I think that binging series in general just like isn't for me, because I realized that books 3, this book and the last book of the series, the plots kind of started to run together because I read these books like one right after another, and also like the dynamics of the romances in these two books started to run together. And I'm not sure if I would have enjoyed these two books more had I not binged the series. Like maybe I should have spaced them out, but it is what it is. I still enjoyed them. I gave both of these books 4 stars, book 3 and book 4. But yeah, I've just come to the conclusion that binging series or binging books that have the same vibe or are by the same author, it's just not for me. I definitely need more variety in my reading. So you know what? Lesson learned. I've learned that about myself. But yeah, this is Franny's story. She is also a working woman, actually. She works as the bookkeeper for Jack Dodger at his gambling hell. And then Sterling, who is a duke. Sterling, kind of a hot mess. I don't think that he planned on becoming Duke as early as he had to. Yeah, I definitely enjoyed this romance for sure. There were some really beautiful moments between the couple, but yeah, for some reason I just didn't connect to them as much as I did the previous couples in the series. What I will say, a star of this book is seeing Peter, this young boy who's living on the streets, because one of the things about Franny is that she has opened her own orphanage. And so she's been rescuing these children off the streets and giving them a home. And Peter is one of the young boys that she has rescued. And so it's really cool to see that young boy come into their lives, because he ends up being the hero of Once More, My Darling Rogue. They change his name to Drake. And I've read that book already, and so it was just like really cool to see that connection. Okay, so the 4th and final book of the series, well, there is another novella, but I didn't feel the need to read it. This one is Midnight Pleasures with a Scoundrel. Now this one, y'all, Lorraine Heath really said that she, in addition to serving her passion and her angst that she's known for, she really said, I am going to serve plot twists. Oh my goodness. Like, Y'all, this book is so crazy, and it's like I couldn't have predicted the direction that this book went in. So this one is about James, who is a part of the gang of kids that are now all grown up, and he is a Bow Street runner, or he's a detective for Scotland Yard. Yes, I think that's what it is. And then we have our heroine Eleanor. Now she comes to London for revenge, and I am obsessed with revenge plots. Oh my goodness, and this one was fantastic. She comes to London for revenge because her sister, she was ruined by this Marquis in a really traumatic way. Like when that scene comes up, because the only reason why Eleanor knows this is because her sister left a diary behind, and so there are some pages where she details what happened to her, and like, oh my goodness, it's brutal. It's brutal. I just want to throw that out there. And she does end up taking her own life. And so now Eleanor is hell-bent on revenge against this Marquis. She crosses paths with James. Let me think about this. I think the Marquis reached out to Scotland Yard because he thinks somebody is following him and watching him, and he's not wrong about that. So things go on from there. Like, yeah, the plot twist, y'all, girl, it was a lot. But like in the best way possible. And I did really enjoy the romance. I think that James, it just happens. I mean, he just happens to be my least favorite of the scoundrels. I mean, he's just like fine, you know? So yeah, I gave that one 4 stars. So next up we have Escort by Skye Warren. This is my first book by this author. I was totally influenced to read this by Brie from In Love and Words. I get so many of my contemporary romance recommendations from Brie for sure. And so this one is about Hugo, who is an escort, meaning that he is a sex worker. And then we have our heroine B. Her full name is Beatrice, but she goes by B. And she is agoraphobic. So she never leaves her penthouse. And what's really cool about this is that it is told entirely from the hero's POV. Also, Hugo is French. And I do think that the narrator did a pretty good job with the French accent, like keeping it consistent the entire time. And yeah, it kind of just goes on from there. I don't really want to go any more into the plot. I did end up giving this 3.5 stars though. While I loved the premise and I loved Hugo as a character, and I liked B as a character as well, I just kind of wanted more from this romance. But for some reason, just something was missing. But I do overall think it was well done. And if you want to read a sex worker romance like this, I would overall recommend it. I personally love reading romances where one or both of the main characters are sex workers. I just think that there's always really interesting conversations brought up surrounding sex work. My Hermione fanfic of the month, or that I've read so far this month, I'm sure I'll read another one by the end of February, but this is Breathman's / Battle Scars by Onyx and Elm. And I have gotten a couple comments about fanfiction in general, and let me just say, if you didn't know, it's illegal for these authors to make any profit off of fanfics. So they're all free to access. Just go onto a fanfiction website. I personally use Archive of Our Own, and it's very easy if you want to download like a Kindle compatible version of it. And also you're not going to find fanfics like on Amazon or anything like that. Just wanted to throw that out. But this one I was excited to read because this one is an 8th year alternate universe. So the basic premise is that all of the witches and wizards that were 7th years during the war, the ministry has ordered them to come back to Hogwarts for, basically to like finish out their 7th year, but they're technically 8th years. They're all like 18 at this point. And so we are seeing this very interesting situation where Hermione is just not coping well after the war. And it seems like everybody else is doing just fine. Everybody's just really happy that the war is over, and she just does not know how to cope. And she sees that Draco Malfoy seems to be in the same boat. He is also not doing well. I mean, it makes sense that the Slytherins wouldn't be doing well because most of them were Death Eaters or like Death Eater sympathizers. And so now like everybody else is just like very prejudiced against them. And yeah, so this is just like the messiest angstiest fan fiction that you'll ever read. Like seriously, if you want all of the teen drama with your Dramini fanfic, this is the one for you. This one's also very toxic, like this romance between Draco and Hermione, and I will be honest, sometimes it got to be like a little too much even for me, and I'm not someone that has a strong opinion about toxicity in my romances. But yeah, I just wanted to throw out there that there's definite emotional abuse going on, kind of both ways. Like yes, Draco is definitely the more abusive one between the two of them, but Hermione also hurts Draco throughout. And there are some things that I really enjoyed about this fanfic. I will say it's about like 600 pages, so just be aware of that. It's long. A lot of fanfics are. And what's really cool about this is that we get to see the Slytherins more. I mean, obviously we don't get to see too much of them in the original series, and when we do see of them is like overwhelmingly negative. It just very much comes across that if you are placed into Slytherin, you're going to be an evil person, and I've always kind of hated that. And so it was really cool to see Slytherins being normal, just like everybody else. Like yeah, like some of them are morally gray, of course. I was addicted to the writing. Like I could not stop reading this fan fiction. I did end up giving this 4 stars because like I said, the toxicity was like a little bit too much for me. I wanted to see more of Draco and Hermione being at peace and being happy with each other, but we don't see a ton of that. And I guess it kind of makes sense with the story and stuff, but yeah, I wanted them to be happy more. And also the ending, I feel very conflicted about the ending. There's something that the author decides to do with one of the side characters during like this big final battle scene that I am not happy with. I'm still not happy with it to this day. And I finished this fanfiction like over a week ago. I'm not gonna spoil what it is, but yeah, I'm not happy. And so then because of that, the very ending was spoiled for me, and because like it didn't end quite the way that I wanted it to, basically. We have a book that I have right here. This is Electric Idol, and it kind of matches the eye look that I'm going for today. Electric Idol by Katie Robert. This is book 2 in her Dark Olympus series. Let's see if I can prop this book up so that you guys can see it. So yeah, this is book 2 in her Dark Olympus series. This is a Psyche and Eros retelling. This series is very interesting because it gives me vibes of both historical romance, because there's these titles that are passed down from generation to generation, and just the way that the society works gives me vibes of historical romances, but also it gives me vibes of mafia romances because of these families and how they're all interconnected. And the city of the city of Olympus itself just kind of gives me vibes of like a mafia romance. And so in this one we have Psyche, our heroine. She's a plus size heroine, but she's comfortable in her skin. We love to see that with plus size heroines. And then we have Eros, who has been sent to kill Psyche by his kind of crazy mother. So yeah, this is one of those situations where one of the main characters is sent to kill the other one, but instead Eros kind of falls for Psyche pretty quickly after meeting with her. And so instead he proposes that they have a marriage of convenience, and so things go on from there. I loved the entire first half of this book. Yeah, the development of the romance between Eros and Psyche was really great, because it's just really cool to see a character like Eros who thinks that he's unworthy and incapable of love, falling and simping for Psyche. Like, it was just so good. The thing about this book, and the reason why I gave it 4 stars, is because to me the plot is weak. It's very weak. The plot centers around Eros's mother Aphrodite and her wanting Psyche dead, and so, you know, sending Eros to do it. And I just found Aphrodite to be a very weak villain. I never ever felt threatened by her, even a little bit. Like, the stakes never felt that high. Even during like the final like conflict, the final like battle scene, I never was worried at all that like Psyche was gonna die or anything. Like, she just was not a very threatening villain, in my opinion. And her reasoning for wanting Psyche dead, I was just like, okay. Like, you know, it just like wasn't very strong. So for that reason, I did give it 4 stars, but I still really enjoyed it. And of course, because it's Katie Roberts, she serves the steam and the sex scenes. And I'm just really looking forward to seeing like where this series goes, because this is only book 2. So there's definitely a lot more characters that Katie Roberts can write about. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what she does going forward. Next up, we have this really short novella that centers around Valentine's Day. This is 1-800-CUPID. This was just fine. I'll just be straight up with you guys. I gave it 3 stars. The premise was really cute though. It does involve a plus-sized heroine, and our hero is the owner of this dating app where you can hire someone to take you out on a date, but they're not escorts, like nothing sexual happens, it's just dates. And so our heroine hires our hero. He decides to like try out being one of the people you can date on the app. I don't even know if that made sense. But yeah, she hires our hero to take her to her sister's wedding, and things go on from there. This was just fine, a little too cheesy at times, and if I say something's too cheesy, you know it's really cheesy, because I love cheese. Like I do, I love cheese. But yeah, so it was just fine. So next I'm going to talk about the entire Will Darling series by KJ Charles. This is a series of 3 books. This is technically a historical romance series that is set in 1920s London. This is about our main character, Will Darling, of course, and he has recently come back from World War I. He's definitely feeling lost. I mean, when these men were coming back from the war, they didn't necessarily have any guarantees of like jobs or a life in general. And so he definitely doesn't really know what to do, but his uncle has this bookshop, and I think he becomes really ill and is going to pass away soon, and so he passes on his bookshop to Will, and so now Will does have a purpose and a job. But very soon after he takes over this bookshop, this very suspicious and sinister looking man comes into the bookshop, and he straight up asks Will, where's the information? And Will, understandably so, is like, what are you talking about? And he's like, I know you have the information, give it to me now. And Will is like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, and so then this wonderful man, Kim, comes into the picture. He's essentially a secret agent. And so together, Kim and Will unfold this mystery of this information that this man and that these other people are looking for. And so things go on from there. Each book is about a different mystery plot. But the romance is between Will, our main character, and Kim, who actually is he the son of a Viscount? No. He's the son of a Marquis, and he is a Viscount. But it's really just like a courtesy title. The title doesn't really mean anything. And so there's definitely like a class difference thing going on. This is a very angsty and messy romance, particularly in like the first book. I love Kim so much, but he's a little shit a lot of the times. He lies a lot to Will, and he has his reasons for that, but like just know like this is not like a clean cut romance. Like it's angsty, it's messy, but it's also a really great romance. And the thing about this series really is the characters. If it wasn't for the amazing characters and like the 1920s London setting, I would not have enjoyed this series as much as I did. We also have 2 side characters in this series that I absolutely adored. One of them is Maisie, who is a Black woman. She is Will's best friend. And I loved her character. And then we have Phoebe, who is in a fake engagement. I mean, well, it is a real engagement, but they're not engaged because they love each other. She's engaged to Kim. And so she is just a fabulous character. Love her so much. I do want to point out with this series that it definitely reads more of like a cozy mystery historical fiction with a strong romance. I don't think this series focuses nearly enough on the romance, though I love the romance so much. Like, I just wish that KJ Charles would have focused on it more. Like, it's such a good romance. And the mystery and like the action scenes and that and all of that, like it reads like cozy mystery because like, yeah, I guess the stakes are high, but it never reads like anyone's lives are actually threatened, if that makes sense. Like I never was like really all that afraid for our characters. You like historical fiction / romances that center around LGBTQIA+ major characters, I definitely would recommend this. I gave it 4 stars. I don't even know if I said that, but yes, I gave this series as a whole 4 stars. Really enjoyed it. I'm interested in reading more from KJ Charles, but I'm hoping that the other books that I check out from her focus more on the romance, because if they don't, then I will be disappointed. Next up, yes, we have Stolen Heir by Sophie Lark. This is book 2 in her Brutal Birthright series, which is a mafia romance series. This is the book that has sparked my love for Sophie Lark. I gave this book 5 stars. I am so excited to read like all of this woman's backlist now. Like, oh my goodness. This was so freaking good. I enjoyed book 1. I gave that one 4 stars. I read that one back in November. But this one to me was just on another level. And what's interesting is that this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling in every sense of the word. Sophie Lark truly does a fantastic job of combining elements from the Beauty and the Beast story with mafia and putting them together into one romance. It's so good. But we have our first main character, Miko. We meet in the first chapter. Let me just say that the first chapter is very rough. It is very tough to read. It's very dark. It involves a relative of Miko's committing suicide. I just want to point that out because I don't really have many or any triggers, but even for me, it was tough to read that chapter. So just know. He seeks revenge on the men that did these terrible things to his sister and caused her to take her own life. And but those guys are a part of the Polish mafia, and so the guy in charge of the Polish mafia finds out what Miko has been doing and he's impressed, and so he asks Miko if he wants a job, and so he joins up with the Polish mafia. So now it's 10 years later. He's in Chicago. Miko is now in charge of the Polish mafia because in book 1, Brutal Prince, the man that was in charge of the Polish mafia and was Miko's mentor was killed by a member of Nessa's family, Nessa, our heroine. And so as revenge for that, Miko decides to kidnap Nessa and take her to this insane Baroque style mansion that he owns in Chicago. And so that's where the Beauty and the Beast plotline comes in. I loved how even to very small details of the Beauty and the Beast story, like Miko tells Nessa that she can never go into the West Wing, for instance. Like I loved those little details that Sophie Lark included in the story. I also loved that Nessa is a ballet dancer, and I just adored seeing that, like her dance journey being a part of her overall character journey. And of course, I love a morally gray hero such as Miko. I mean, he does pretty terrible things throughout this book because he is now like a husk of a person because of his sister's death. And seeing him grow from being this like terrible person into being someone who's worthy of someone like Nessa is just really beautiful to see. I thought that this was also paced really well, and I loved reading about not just the romance, because the romance does not kick in until about 40% of the way through this book, but I loved reading about like everything else going on in this story and in this world having to do with like the different mafia families, because we've got like Nessa is a part of what? The Irish mafia family, there's an Italian mafia, there's a Russian mafia, and just there's so many interesting dynamics going on between all of these mafia families, and that was really interesting to read about as well. Next up, we have A Certain Appeal. This is by Vanessa King. This is a traditionally published romance novel, and it is a retelling of Pride and Prejudice. And the way that this was pitched to me, I feel like I randomly found out about this book on Twitter. I've never heard anyone on BookTube talk about this. Sorry if I'm blocking my face. I am terrible at doing my makeup on camera. But yeah, this was pitched to me on Twitter as being like a modern day Pride and Prejudice retelling, obviously. And it was also pitched to me as if the idea of a modern day Mr. Darcy being plopped into a burlesque club appeals to you, then you should read this book. And so I was like, hell yes. I mean, I have always been intrigued by the world of burlesque, and this also takes place in New York City. So yeah, this was just delightful. I gave it 4 stars. I definitely want to read more romance novels that are centered around burlesque. So if you guys have recommendations, definitely let me know. What I will say is that this is one of those books that reads like a very typical traditionally published romance in every sense of the word. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but I've just come to realize over the years of reading romance at this point that like traditionally published romances, just most of them don't serve what indie published romances do for me. And I know I'm not the only one that believes that. And so yeah, lately I've been finding a lot of the traditionally published romances that I've been reading to just be like okay, but like nothing that has truly blown me away. So next up we have Duke I'd Like to F. This is a historical romance anthology by Sierra Simone, Joanna Shupe, Eva Lee, Nicola Davidson, and Adriana Herrera. So let us prop this up. So yeah, I ended up giving this like 4 stars, maybe 4.5. Yeah, 4.5 stars. And I think at the end of the day, I went into this with very high expectations. And so I think that's part of the reason why I didn't love this as much as I was hoping to. I feel like if I would have gone into this with either no expectations or just like normal expectations, I probably would have loved this more, but I don't know. I still definitely enjoyed it. Like I said, I gave it 4.5 stars. It's just some of the novellas didn't give me what I wanted. Actually, I really expected to love Joanna Shupe's novella, which is My Dirty Duke, and I gave that one 4 stars. It actually it wasn't my favorite of the bind up, and that's a huge surprise. My favorites were Duke for Hire by Nicola Davidson, which the premise of that one is, you know what, I'm just gonna read it off the back of the book because I can't remember. As her fiery clergyman father chases away all suitors, yes, Ada Blair, she is the daughter of a vicar. She's resigned to spinsterhood, yet while she can't wed, betting might be another matter. One man meets all her requirements for a discreet and expert pleasure tutor, Jasper, Duke of Gilroy, but he insists on a very wicked contract. Yeah, I loved it. I mean, Nicola Davidson always gives me what I want. She is the master of erotic romance. She is so amazing at combining the elements of erotica with a really great romance. And then I adored An Education and Pleasure by Eva Lee. This one is about a governess, Cecilia. She's the governess to the Duke of Tarrington. But the Duke, he's just come into his title. The old Duke passed away recently. So what's his name? Owen, he's the new Duke. He's only 21 and she's like 30. So it's not that huge of an age difference. But yeah, she resigns herself to a passionless life, except now that the old Duke is dead and Owen, the new Duke, is very tempting and much younger, is the chance to give Owen an education and pleasure too enticing to refuse. Oh my God, this was so good. Eva Lee knows how to write like older heroine, younger hero romances. So freaking good. So those were definitely the stars of the bind up in my opinion. I'm still definitely looking forward to reading Rake I'd Like to F, and then they are coming out with Villain I'd Like to F later this year, I think in November, and I'm so excited for that. So next up we have Madness of Viscount Atherborn by Elisa Braden. So this is my first book by Elisa Braden. It definitely won't be my last. This is also the first book in her Rescued from Ruin series. This is about Lucian and Victoria, our heroine. So this is another revenge plot. So like I said, we have Lucian, the Viscount Atherborn. Now, he came into his title rather tragically because this guy who is a duke, he ended up getting into a duel with Lucian's older brother, who was the Viscount. He ended up killing his brother in that duel, and so now Lucian has taken over the title, and so Lucian is hell-bent on revenge against this duke, because not only did he kill his brother in that duel, but that duel only happened because the Duke ruined their younger sister and caused her sister to commit suicide. I'm done with my makeup, by the way, so I hope you like the way that this turned out. I'm very happy with it, but yeah, so his plan for revenge is to find Victoria, who is this Duke's sister. I can't remember the Duke's name, and that's so annoying. And so his plan is to show up at this ball where all of London society is at, and he's going to find Victoria and ruin her to get back at the Duke. And so he does ruin her. Basically, he finds her out on the terrace. They are immediately very attracted to each other. They start making out, and somebody catches them, and so Victoria is now ruined. And Lucian, though, realizes that he's like insanely attracted to Victoria. And so he decides that he will rescue her from ruin. You know, makes sense because of the title of the series. He will rescue her from ruin by marrying her himself. I just have to say the writing was beautiful and exquisite. Oh my goodness. I am obsessed with Elisa Braden's writing style. I can see why so many people love her books. I am so excited to read more of the books in this series. Like I said, it's like a forced marriage situation. I love the development of their romance. I love that this does turn into a marriage in trouble situation, one of my favorite tropes ever. I think the only reason I did give this 4.5 stars, the only reason why I didn't give this 5 stars is that I wanted more page time spent on their happily ever after. The happily ever after happens so late in the book that we don't really get any time really with just the two of them being happy together. And I'll just say this right now, there was totally a missed opportunity for a makeup sex scene. I'm just gonna throw that out there. Next up, we have Sweet Talk by Cara Bastone. Oh my god. So this is, I gave this 5 stars. I'm just gonna throw that out there. This is an Audible original audiobook. And so now I think it's recently been published as an ebook if you want to read in that format, but I highly, 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 highly recommend that you listen to the audiobook. You do have to have an Audible account to listen to it, I believe. And if you do have an Audible account, it is a part of their Plus catalog, which is awesome. And so this is about Elliot and Jesse. This is a very interesting wrong number romance, because we have Elliot, one of our main characters. He is dyslexic. He has other learning disabilities as well. He texted Jesse thinking that she was, I think, his sister, because he wasn't really looking at his contacts list all that closely. And they strike up a conversation. They end up having these late night phone calls because they both suffer from insomnia for different reasons. And oh my god, this is just like the sweetest and cutest romance. Oh my goodness. I highly recommend this if you're somebody who's like just now getting into the romance genre, and if you prefer your romances to be lower heat, because this is a very short audiobook. It's just about like 5 hours. So this romance is all about these two people talking on the phone together, but Elliot doesn't know who this JD person is. That's how Jesse was put into his phone as JD. So he has no idea who JD is, but Jesse knows who Elliot is, and there's a very specific reason why she is very hesitant about telling Elliot who she is. I love this as well because Jesse is kind of a grumpy heroine. She's also like an intimidating heroine. Like throughout the book, we see that a lot of people see her that way. She's got like tattoos and she rides a motorcycle. Like she is a badass bitch. Like we love her. And then Elliot is just like, oh my god, the sweetest of cinnamon roll heroes. I adore like gentle and vulnerable heroes. He's kind of dealing with like mental trauma because of something that happened in his apartment. I was just like swooning the entire time that I was reading this. Yeah, just absolutely fantastic. I could not give it less than 5 stars. And then the very last book that I have to talk about is Not So Nice Guy by R.S. Gray. I just finished this book a couple of hours ago, and I have read a book by R.S. Gray before. No, I've actually read a novella by this author as well. And she just writes really great rom-coms. They are rom-coms in every sense of the word. And so this one is about our hero Ian and our heroine Sam. They've been best friends for years. They're both teachers at this high school, and their romance is so inspired by Jim and Pam from The Office. Like, oh my god, if you are obsessed with their romance as much as most people are that watch The Office, you will really enjoy this book. And it's funny because there's even a scene where somebody else who's trying to date Sam goes to Ian for like tips on how to court her, basically. And so Ian gives this guy like just terrible information. Like he goes into all these things that Sam loves, like polka music and guys who are very serious and brooding when the opposite is true. So that's definitely reminiscent of the scene from The Office where like Andy approaches Jim about dating Pam. Like, oh, it's just, it's fantastic. But it's also very sexy. There is this phone sex scene pretty early on in the book, and like, girl, I like dropped my jaw. Like, oh my God. So yeah, this was great. I did give it like 4.5 stars just because like I adored the first half, and then the second half went in a very weird and like bonkers direction that I was not prepared for. And I was just like, girl, what is going on with this book? Like, so yeah, it wasn't a perfect book for that reason, but I still really enjoyed it and I definitely would recommend it. And I'm also really looking forward to reading more from R.S. Gray. So that is it. Oh my God, we got through all the books that I have read so far in February. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I would love it if you would leave a comment down below if you want to tell me about some of the books that you've been reading so far this month. And I would also love it if you would leave a like and subscribe, and I thank you so much in advance if you do, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.